Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word Live, a new look F1 Word. Hope you like it, guys. I think it looks slick as hell. Thank you very much to Bloomy for all the new graphics and whatnot. Loads changing on the channel, including, as you can see there, the logo. It's been a while we've had the other one, but it's time for a bit of a freshen up and a change, so yes. But tonight, we were planning on going live at 8 o'clock to do lots of interaction with you guys, take tons of your questions, and then Red Bull, for the second year in a row, either directly or indirectly, threw a hand grenade into the driver market and decided to make things a little bit interesting this Monday morning. So, of course, we will be talking about Pierre Gasly and Alexander Albon swapping seats. And then we will, of course, do a bit of silly season speculation, as we tend to do in these more chillaxed... Oh, I said chillaxed. Why did I say chillaxed? Relaxed streams. And then, of course, we'll take an absolute ton of your comments and questions and whatnot as well. So thank you to everyone who's got in touch over on Twitter and bits like that. But before we get into any of it, I'm going straight to him. Good evening, Dan. How are you feeling, mate? What a dramatic day.
Good evening. Hello, everyone who's watching and in chat. Did not expect that when I woke up this morning whatsoever. And I know we've got plenty to talk about and I can't wait to jump into it. But I didn't expect any switches, to be honest, over the summer. So to get this one so early on, I mean, awesome stuff. So it's going to be fun.
So if people didn't catch the news this morning, basically, if I go over the full quote in the video that I did this morning. So if you want to go check that out, feel free. I'm not going to sit and read it all again now. But basically, they've decided that they want to evaluate is how they're dressing it up, Alexander Albon, for the rest of this season to make an informed decision, I believe is what they said, on their 2020 driver lineup. And, you know, people have jumped on that and gone, oh, well, it's not all on performance then. It's Helmut Marko. He's not evaluating anything. I'm pretty sceptical, Dan. I'm that kind of person. I'm quite negative in that respect, but this has been coming for a while. But basically, Albon's in for the rest of this season, starting in Belgium. He'll take the place of Gasly, who will team up with Daniil Kvyat at Toro Rosso. A lot of surprise that Kvyat didn't get the seat, actually, Dan. But what was your reaction this morning when you first heard the news? I'd imagine shocked, probably.
Yes, definitely. I mean, speechless. I saw it on my phone and I thought, no, that's a load of rubbish. Surely not. I mean, Gasly's not performed great this season. You know, I've got to hold my hands up and say that. But I'm so on the fence whether it's the right decision to go with Albon or whether they should have gone with Kvyat. My initial reaction was, Danny's been mugged here. But as the more time goes on and the more I've seen from people on Twitter, and I'm sure people in chat have said different things online, the more I'm starting to think maybe Albon is the right call. But I'm so on the fence about it. It's unbelievable.
I guess it depends if you believe Marko and Red Bull's line about evaluating for next season. I mean, Gasly hasn't been good. I can't sit here and go, oh, bless him, he's a nice guy, you know, give him a chance. It's a ruthless sport, Formula One. You've got to be on your game. Gasly hasn't been on his game. I'll go over some stats a little bit later in the video because they've swung my opinion, because I was surprised it wasn't Kvyat this morning. But looking at the numbers, Dan, I've got to say, I sort of agree with Red Bull on their decision. Not just on what Marko said or the team have said about evaluating for the future, but also his performances versus Kvyat. Daniil Kvyat's massively more experienced than Alexander Albon. I'm going to get their names mixed up so much. I'm going to keep saying Gasly, you know I am. But so much more experienced. A lot of people are talking about this amazing season that Kvyat's having. But Pierre Gasly is the wrong person to talk about. Alex Albon, I told you I'd get them mixed up, didn't get in a Formula One car until before pre-season testing. Obviously, as you will know, Dan, was set for Formula E with Nissan, was it, I believe?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And then wasn't in until just before pre-season testing in a shakedown, then got testing, didn't crash it twice or whatever, which Gasly did. And then he's actually had a stellar season. I mean, the numbers... I use pen and paper and everything, Dan. I'm well prepared today. But I haven't picked up a pen for ages. But actually, the numbers don't lie. Versus Kvyat, he's been out-qualified 6.5, which is only 1 against his more experienced teammate. The average gap between them is 100th of a second in Albon's favour, and he's only been outraced 7 times to 5. And if you remove that podium, which I don't want to do because Kvyat totally deserves that podium, but if you remove that from the points, Albon has been right on him all season. And I actually think, again, this morning, I'm a bit like you, Dan, surely Kvyat's the way to go. But the more you read, the more you look into the numbers, the more you think, actually, I think they've nailed this.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And what you were just saying there, I mean, this is a guy who was dropped from the Red Bull program. I mean, only a couple of seasons ago, he was dropped from the program and then he had a difficult first season in Formula 2. Second season in Formula 2 was much better. As you mentioned, got that drive with Nissan, and I thought, this is another one of those guys who's got the talent, but he slipped through the cracks, didn't quite make it to Formula 1. Then the announcement for Toro Rosso, and now, 6 months on from his Formula E contract, he's going to be driving for Red Bull. Awesome stuff for him, but no, as you just mentioned, I think it's been, for both Toro Rosso guys and for a lot of drivers in the midfield, it's been so up and down for so many of the teams. A lot of their results have, I don't want to say got lost, but Albon's drive in China, for example, started from the pit lane, got to P10. It's drives like that have made him really stand out this season. And you just mentioned Germany then. We spoke about on the race reaction stream afterwards, Alex Albon, despite finishing P6, he had an incredible race. Considering that was his first ever Formula One race in the wet, he seemed like a natural. He was racing wheel to wheel with Lewis Hamilton, for crying out loud. That shows you the kind of driver that Albon's going to be. I think for me, the thing I'm more scary about is, at the time, I felt like they rushed Kvyat into Red Bull. I feel they did the same with Gasly. And now Albon's only done 12 races. And as you say, I think he's definitely showed the speed. And if, let's even just say Kvyat's slightly better at the moment, Albon's done 12 races compared to Kvyat's 3 or 4 seasons or whatever it is now. So he's going to be good. I can't really argue with that. But we expected that from Gasly. It hasn't happened. I think I'm more just nervous for Albon. And I think this is another risk from Red Bull. And I just hope at the end of even end of this season, they don't then move about Albon as well, and it just dents everyone's confidence. So I think that's more initially why I was a bit nervous.
Yeah, I get that. I'm totally with you on that one. That's my biggest worry, is that it's maybe a little bit too soon. I said this morning that Christian Horner was talking about how Gasly was promoted a year earlier. And I said that, obviously, it was early in the morning, so please forgive me for any mistakes in the video this morning. I'd not long been up, despite the news breaking at lunchtime. Long story. But anyway, let's not get into that. But he's talking about how Gasly's been promoted a year earlier. Albon's only had 12 races, and I know that doesn't mean he won't perform well. I know that doesn't mean that he won't shine at Red Bull, because they're two completely different drivers. But from a Red Bull perspective, if they're going to stick with that narrative of, Gasly needed more time, it's a bit of a surprise to see Albon in that car. But it's a great opportunity for him, and he has shone this season. And I think the ultimate thing as well, Dan, he's got more potential than Kvyat. Nothing against Kvyat. Danny is not 38, coming towards the end of his career, but I'm going to talk about him like he is. He's done several years in F1. Alexander Albon's in his first year. This is what he's done in year 1 after 12 races and very little experience. He's got a lot of room to grow, and I think that is what probably has appealed to Red Bull. Bring him in, get him alongside Max, see how he gets on. Look at next season. By the way, I'm going to come to Gasly in a minute, but I don't think Gasly will be back in that car again. But anyway, look at how things go over the next 9 races, and then if he does enough, he might excel. He might hop in that car in Belgium and win the flipping race. We don't know. But, as long as he gets in there and does enough and gets closer to Verstappen than Gasly did, they've got their number 2 driver in that team. Nothing against Albon, not saying that he's just a number 2 driver, but that's effectively what Red Bull are looking for. But it's kind of, they're in a no-lose situation. I was looking at this in the championship. Chances are, if they kept Gasly, they were probably going to finish 3rd in the Constructors. The worst case scenario is they bring in Albon, he doesn't hit the ground running, and they finish 3rd in the Constructors. So they're not going to lose anything. They may gain 2nd if he starts performing, but they're not going to lose anything in that championship. So if they are talking about next season, and it's quite clear that Red Bull and Honda are progressing very nicely and they could be serious challengers next season for the title, it all makes total sense when you start putting those pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, you're 100% correct there. And part of me wants to say the pressures, you've sort of been alluding to it there, but I think the pressure's going to be off Albon in this second half of the season because of what you just said. I find it unrealistic he's going to have a worse half to the season than Gasly has just had. Although saying that, I expected Gasly to do much, much better. And as we have said all season long in the winter, all Albon now has to do is exactly what Gasly had to do and just finish P6. That's all he has to do. He doesn't need to be on the podium. Yes, it'd be great, but Gasly at the beginning of the season wasn't even getting into Q3. That's all Albon needs to do, which, again, it's Formula One and things can always change, but I don't feel that's a lot to ask for someone in the Red Bull. So as long as he can do that, the pressure's going to be off and he's going to have a free ride. As you've just mentioned, they probably don't really care where Albon finishes in the championship. Hopefully, he can try and push up and maybe finish in front of Sainz and Gasly. That'll be probably the target, but it's just 9 races just to see how he goes. And if he's not great, they can move him back to Toro Rosso. No harm done. But I think when you look at it from that perspective, why not swap him and Gasly round and see what there's like for next season?
You know I love my stats. Here's another number for you, which I'm going to throw your way. Just sort of building on what you said there about the chance of him beating Gasly by the end of the season in terms of points. Gasly sits 6th in the Drivers' Championship on 63 points. Albon is down 16 points on the board. The gap is only 47 points.
Wow.
Do you know what? That highlights just how poor Gasly has performed this first half of the season, in that Alexander Albon has got every possibility of hopping in that Red Bull for the rest of this season, and yeah, at least could easily hit 47 points, possibly even the 63 that Gasly's picked up, especially with that Red Bull getting better as well.
When you wonder how far Gasly is going to drop down now, because I imagine Sainz is going to get in front of him, maybe Norris, Raikkonen. So, I mean, I know you want to talk about Gasly in a minute, but how is this going to affect him? Because we saw what happened with Kvyat, and I think that's the reason the team didn't want to bring back Kvyat, was that they've seen his attitude, maybe his, I don't want to say his mental stability, but maybe the mental side of things, Kvyat didn't potentially show in the best light, is what I'm trying to say, when they dropped him the first time round. And I know if Jonty's watching, he'll want one of us to mention this, but I think what Jonty said on Twitter was brilliant, that there's no way Helmut Marko would want to bite the bullet and take back Kvyat. So, yeah, Gasly in a real tricky situation, because like you mentioned, that is not enough points. It's been bad already, but it's going to get worse, I think.
118 less than Verstappen. That's painful, isn't it? It's huge. But yeah, I mean, that Jonty said that on Twitter. I've been saying that for... well, since I did my video on the No More Excuses video, he's got 3 races to turn it around, and I never... He was probably on paper the more likely that Kvyat would get that seat, but I never believed he would, because I've always maintained that Marko would not swallow his pride twice. That's my famous line for this season. It was highly rating Stoffel Van Dorn the other year. This year it's Marko won't swallow his pride twice. I've always felt that. It was through gritted teeth that he brought Kvyat back, because he had no other options. There was no way he was getting in that Red Bull, and I don't think he will for next season. But we'll talk more about Albon, of course, as the stream goes on. But Pierre Gasly's future beyond this season, do you think he's pretty much guaranteed? Because I don't think, Dan, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I do not expect him back in that Red Bull next season. Do you think he's just going to be at Toro Rosso next year, or do you think they might even think, well, hang on a minute, he's not lived up to potential, he's had his chance, time to move him on and find him another team? Thinking well ahead. It's a tough one.
Yeah, it really is. It really is difficult, because I think Red Bull's biggest issue at the moment is that they don't have any young drivers coming through. That's the difficulty they had this year. That's why they brought back Kvyat. And as we said earlier, Albon wasn't in the driver program, so they had to bring him back as well. So they really struggled this year. I mean, even last season they had Brendan Hartley driving for them. So the young driver program's going a little bit stale at the moment. I know they've bought in Patricio O'Ward from IndyCar, I believe, but they've kicked out Dan Ticktum. So,
well, yeah, but wouldn't we all?
Well, very true, very true. So I think Gasly would be sensible for them. I just wonder if Pierre will want to stay with them, because he's seen what's happened to Kvyat, and now Kvyat hasn't had his chance to go back to the team. Maybe he'll think, I've got to try and get out of the team. I mean, where spaces are going to be next year, I don't really know, but I think they will keep him. It just depends on how Gasly's going to bounce back from this and how he performs against Kvyat.
I mean, I say that about the Red. What if he gets in that Toro Rosso, destroys Kvyat, picks up a couple of podiums, absolutely dominates that midfield, ends up best of the rest, and Albon scores 1 point in the final 9 races? Suddenly Red Bull might go, yeah, it was all a dream. It didn't happen, guys. But the rumours I've seen, obviously back to Toro Rosso, we know that for the rest of this season, next season probably. Renault are a name that keep cropping up. I'm not sold on that one, because it would be a great move for Pierre because he would be in a works team, he'd be in a manufacturer team, but he's not performed this year. Why would Renault want to go and take him when they could keep Hulkenberg, who, let's face it, in a completely different car I know, but has been more consistent than Gasly and has been closer to his teammate. I'm going to double check that before I say any more. In terms of qualifying, who's his teammate? Daniel Ricciardo. Come on, Sean. Yeah, less than a tenth between them in qualifying. So why would they want to take that gamble? There's somebody in chat, Jacob C, just says French driver question mark. That's probably one of the reasons he's been linked quite, not heavily, but he's been linked in the press. My argument to that is that could all depend on Esteban Ocon, because I'm still pretty sure that if Mercedes don't take him next year, which by the way, I'm pretty confident they will, but if they do not take him next year, he'll end up in a Renault. So do you think there's anything in this, Dan, or is this just the media getting bored and because it's silly season? And
I mean, I tell you what, Renault, I love their driver lineup. I think it's one of the best on the grid. I think Hulkenberg has done a solid job against Ricciardo. And I think if that car next year or 2021 can get up and running and near the front, I think they'd be in a really good position with those two drivers. That being said, I think their biggest issue is that their drivers aren't particularly young. And potentially that's what they could be looking for in someone like Ocon or Gasly, because they're young drivers. I'm trying to think now. Jack Aitken, Guanyan Zhou, Antoine Hubert aren't completely superstars or haven't shown that yet, I don't think, this season in Formula 2. So I think potentially that's the only way I'm seeing them taking Gasly, is if they really feel a need to take a young driver. But I think they've got a really good lineup, so I'm not particularly buying it, to be honest with you.
I suppose the other thing as well is, and we don't want to get into this today, but it kind of depends how long Renault wants to stick around. There's a lot of talk that they're going to reassess for 2021. If they keep having seasons like this, I'm pretty confident the board are going to turn around and say we'll leave. So maybe from their perspective, actually, kind of wandering away from Gasly is in fact, no, I'll include his name. Forget Gasly, keep Hulkenberg and Ricciardo for another year, wait and see what the board are doing, and then see where your Aitkins and co are before making a decision, and bring one of your young drivers through. Might be an idea. But the other one, oh, Dan. The other link is Haas. First of all, I don't believe this for a second. I think the Red Bull ties, I think it's more likely that Gasly would stay at Toro Rosso and Kvyat would end up in a Haas. I'm also not completely against the idea of Wehrlein being in one of those Haas cars next season with his Ferrari ties now. But Gunther Steiner said they're not a development team. They're not there to get everybody else's drivers ready for them. They're not going to take a driver on for one season. So they're obviously going to be looking at somebody in a multi-year deal. You are what do you call yourself, commander-in-chief of the Grosjean army? So
that is it.
he's your boy, but I think even we've had conversations on these streams where you've said that you think he's probably done for this season, possibly his career now. Is Gasly viable, or do you think it is more likely we'll see a Wehrlein or somebody like that in one of those Haas cars?
For me, I think Haas, what they desperately need is a driver that's consistent. Whether that's someone like a Bottas if he leaves Mercedes, a Hulkenberg if they can steal him away. I think that's what they've been lacking. I mean, the car has not been good this year, and I think that's not helped Grosjean at all, or Magnussen. I mean, Magnussen's been stuck behind a couple of the Williams in a few of the races this year, so I don't think either of them have done particularly well. And I feel, while it would be unfair in a sense to drop either of them because the car's been poor, I think they need a change. So I expect at least one of them to go. Part of me thinks both of them will go, and I think Wehrlein would be a brilliant fit for them. Has that 2 years experience in Formula One, which is okay, and I think he's also done very well in Formula E this year, so I think he would be a nice fit. But again, I think if you're going to take a Wehrlein and a Gasly, I think that's a bit too young. So someone maybe like Perez is pretty much locked down, isn't he, now at Racing Point, but just someone that can be consistent and not caused incidents. that is all they need, and that seems to be something they're struggling with. So I don't see Gasly being a prime option. But that being said, if it comes down to it and they've got the choice between Grosjean, Magnussen and Gasly, maybe they've got to try and make a switch somehow. So again, unlikely, but I think Haas will be making at least one change.
Yeah, I mean, interested on Wehrlein. Good year in FE as well for a guy that's going for his first season. But he's been linked. He's been linked in the media, and he's got those Ferrari ties. So I mean, it could just be the media putting one and one together and coming up with six, as they tend to do, particularly through silly season. But if you are a Grosjean fan, by the way, anybody watching, there is a link to Dan's channel in the description down below. Please do follow that and subscribe. He's a good lad. I mean, he's a knob at times, but
Thanks, man.
You're all right, mate. He's a good lad, and he does good content as well. And he's a big Grosjean fan. So if you do like Grosjean, all three of you head on over there and subscribe and join him to make it 4. Would be brilliant. But bit too soon for Fittipaldi, do you think, at Haas? Did I just say that?
Yeah, he needs to do a season in Formula 2 or Formula 3, I think, before he makes a jump to Formula 1.
Yeah, and the other name, Yuri Vips, sort of sticking with the Red Bull thing as well, impressed me this year, I've got to say, in Formula 3. I've not really heard much of him, but from what I've seen, I mean, there have been a few moments where I've gone, ugh, but generally he's been pretty solid this year. Maybe, obviously, we're not talking about Formula 1 next year, but in terms of the young drivers coming through the Toro Rosso ranks and filling seats, maybe they could really do with him stepping up and getting those super license points and hopping in that car in the next couple of seasons. They're going to need him, Red Bull. They've got nobody. But I think Gasly, if I was going out on a limb right now, he'll stay at Toro Rosso. I think I'd like to believe that they are talking about evaluating for the future, but I also think this is one, let's try Albon and see, because there are going to be the likes of, we're going to talk about in a minute, Valtteri Bottas possibly becoming available. He would be a good fit alongside Max Verstappen at Red Bull. So maybe they're just thinking, let's try Albon out. If he's amazing, we'll give him the seat. If not, we'll pop him back in at Toro Rosso and we'll give an outsider, if you like, a chance. But I think if I was to go out on a limb right now, I'd say Gasly will stay at Toro Rosso. Whether that's alongside Albon or Kvyat, time will tell, I guess, Dan. But if you were guessing now, a betting man, who's in that top? Where will Gasly be next season, and who's going to be in the Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen? 2 questions.
I think it's double whammy. I think it's just going to stay as it is now. I think Albon will stay at Red Bull, and I think Kvyat and Gasly will get, I don't want to say a final chance, but I think they'll get another go, because as you just say, I don't think Award or Vips are quite close enough yet to Formula 1, and I don't really think there's many other options for them.
There was apparently, quickly on Kvyat, a rumour floating around that he was offered the seat, turned it down because he didn't want to play number 2 to Verstappen for the rest of this season. That's BS, isn't it, Dan? If Red Bull come calling, you don't go, nah, you're all right, I'll stay in the Toro Rosso and then I'll go drive a Williams for a couple of years. You take the opportunity when it crops up, don't you? Especially Kvyat, who wants to prove you were wrong to drop me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not buying that one, I'm afraid.
There you go. That's the end of that rumour. A couple of people point out in the comments, somebody on Twitter as well mentioned that one. But we're going to talk, we are going to come to questions in that in a few minutes, but I do want to talk. I'm hoping to put the slides in the right order. I have, look at that. Valtteri Bottas, his future. It's looking, Dan, as I said in my Garage Gossip video last Friday, as though he is probably on his way out of Mercedes. My gut right now is telling me it will be Ocon and Lewis Hamilton for next year. Do you think that'd be harsh on Bottas? I know... Look, I keep saying it, I would have dropped him at the end of last season, but I wouldn't touch him this season. Even looking long term, I'd still keep him in that car for 2020. I think he's done enough, possibly even more than enough. But I just sort of feel they're at a point now, Mercedes, where they have to make decisions for the future. It's no good. Lewis Hamilton's only got 1 year left on his deal after this season, may not stick around. They need to be thinking long term, don't they? But it does feel a little bit harsh that we're speculating about a guy's future who's won 2 races, 9 podiums in total, has been pretty solid, rough couple of races, but generally pretty solid this year. Started the season off, it's the beard, by the way, started the season off seriously well. It just feels harsh to be speculating about his future, but as we've seen today, that's Formula 1, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely one of the guys last season banging the drum that he shouldn't be dropped. I was the opposite to you. I felt that he hadn't been awful last season, and yes, I know you don't like this, but I was one of those people saying he got unlucky. I'm sorry. That was me, I'm afraid. And I felt he just deserved one more chance, and I think he's taken that this year. That being said, having watched your Garage Gossip video, I think you're right. I think they really are leaning towards Esteban Ocon now. And just for anyone in chat, I do not think George Russell will be moving there anytime soon. I think he's good enough, and I think it'd be a risk for sure. But I think Williams have definitely signed a deal to have him long term. And I think the difficulty with that is that I don't think Ocon can really go anywhere else, because obviously Racing Point, the other Mercedes engine team, don't want him. And as much as people love to say, oh, Ocon can go to Williams, surely, that's not happening. Claire Williams and Williams are too proud to be even considered a Mercedes B team. So that's fair enough. I can't really have any issues with that. So looking to the future and looking at Mercedes this year, if they had Ocon in the car, I don't really think it would make a fat lot of difference, to be honest with you. They have, they have dominated so far this year. So if Ocon was in the car and wasn't winning races, well, Hamilton's going to be winning more races more often than not. So while they've got this upper hand, and while a lot of teams are going to be focusing on 2021 rather than 2020, I think now's the best time before Ocon misses out on another season of Formula One and George Russell overtakes him in the pecking order. It's unfair on Bottas, but as you just say, I think it's now or never for Ocon and Mercedes.
On the Russell thing, I mean, Toto Wolff has dismissed it and said it is between Bottas and Ocon. That's it. No Russell for next year. But if they were third in the if they were in Red Bull's position right now, Russell would get that seat next year. That's what I think, because they've got nothing to lose in that respect. So why not give him the time to grow? But because they've got the championship in the bag this year, they're going to want, and they're going to expect, and I think we all expect they're probably going to fight, if not win it next year. Do they want to give a driver with 1 year's experience the opportunity? But as a lot of people or risk, I suppose is the point I'm making, but a lot of people have made the point that Toto Wolff is saying, the inexperience of Russell, it's not a place to learn. As people have pointed out on Twitter, he is willing to give somebody a chance who's had a year out of Formula One. That is still, I like Ocon, and I think he will end up in that Mercedes, but I don't care what anybody says, Dan. It is still a risk. Yes, he was good at Force India. He's shown his pace. Yes, he lost to Perez in 2 seasons, blah, 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 because he was the more inexperienced driver and all of this rubbish. But I'm not going back down this road. But I just, I don't know. I think he's the right way to go if they're thinking long term.
I agree. Sorry, mate. My thing just cut out then. Apologies. Right. Did you say Ocon's the right way to?
Yeah, Ocon, right way to go for next year and beyond, obviously. Give him that chance, and if he delivers, then they've got somebody in that they can look at promoting Russell alongside him when Hamilton leaves.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's difficult to judge Russell's performances because Kubica's his teammate and they're both unknown quantities. But I think the only thing Mercedes can potentially use for next year that potentially could help Bottas is that there's a seat in Formula E. And I know Formula E is not of the caliber of Formula One, but if they did keep Ocon out for another year, which I think is a little bit daft, at least they've got somewhere to put him in that season. But I think that's a pretty weak excuse, to be honest with you. And as much as Bottas has done well, I don't see him being world championship material. And at least if you bring in Ocon, he can be with Lewis Hamilton, gain that experience. Although Lewis is a bit of a closed book, he can still have that experience being alongside Hamilton, seeing how he works, and is someone for the future. So I don't like to say it because I love Bottas. I think he's a great guy and he's clearly quick. It just seems like it's inevitable now almost.
Dave WBK in chat, it's a point he makes that a lot of people echo when you read comment sections and if you're on social media. It says Ocon is a standard, borderline, decent driver, nothing more, nothing less. I mean this with the utmost respect. I really do, and I don't mean to sound like I'm being really harsh. Isn't that exactly what Bottas was before he got the seat at Mercedes?
Ooh, I'm not too sure,
Good, very good driver. Really showed himself in that Williams up against, a Massa coming towards the end of his career, of course. But I don't think he wasn't somebody I ever looked at and went, whoa, that guy's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I rated him more highly than I do Ocon. And I think that's why I struggle with this risky move, potentially bringing Esteban into the team, because the 2 years that he had with Force India / Racing Point were okay, but as you just say with Bottas, that they weren't incredible. I wasn't saying, oh my God, get Ocon into that Mercedes now, like we were doing with Max Verstappen when he was in Toro Rosso. So that's still the big thing for me. But as you mentioned, there was Bottas a superstar, not particularly. So maybe they could be a like for like almost, but Ocon's the younger model. I don't know. I'm really stuck with this one, but I think, as you say, it just seems like the atmosphere around the team and little comments team members are making, it seems like Ocon is their man.
I suppose from a Mercedes point of view, what they have to look at when they're making this decision is, will we be any worse off with Ocon? Can Ocon do what Bottas has done for us? That car is the dominant car for most this season. Red Bull are definitely coming back at them. I think Ferrari will be strong in Spa and Monza, with them being quite powerful. They're power tracks, aren't they? So their power unit should shine there. But they've got the dominant car. Could an Ocon or a Russell, let's put his name in there as well, hop in that car and get 9 podiums and a couple of wins? You can't say they absolutely will, but it's not like Bottas has rocked up, won the opening 12 races by a minute, and all of a sudden you're looking at, do you know what I'm trying to say? It's can Ocon do what Bottas is doing? And I think that's maybe where they need to look. But let's sort of almost wrap up on Bottas. Where do you think he'll go next season? 3 options I've got on the screen. Renault and Haas are pretty much an option for everybody at the minute, because they seem to be linked with all this talk about Hulkenberg's future, Grosjean and Magnussen as well. Red Bull is top of that list for me at the moment, mainly for championship order, but they're on there. He would be a good driver to put alongside Max Verstappen. You know, somebody that could come in. If they need somebody to play the team game, he's willing to play it. He's quick. He's consistent. Obviously, he's had a couple of rough races, but he is quick and consistent. And he'll keep a nice, calm environment. He's not going to ruffle too many feathers in there. So he'd be a good driver to put alongside Max Verstappen for next season. So I don't think that's completely beyond the realms of possibility. It's all going to come to Albon, though, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah, exactly. That's the key thing here. And it's also down to, will Albon be happy to move back to Toro Rosso? And I think that will all depend on what happens with Kvyat. If Kvyat can move to a Haas, or we'll just say Renault for this example, if Kvyat can move away and a Toro Rosso seat opens up, then yeah, I think you're right. Bottas is the exact kind of driver that Red Bull need at the moment. They need that consistency, a little bit like Haas. I think just a guy that doesn't cause troubles, that can just score points. And like we've seen with Bottas and Hamilton, Bottas is, I don't want to say fine being the number 2 driver, because clearly he's been pretty peed off at times. I mean, Russia last season, he did not look a happy boy on that podium, but he is happy to play the team game. And that's something that I think Red Bull could really benefit with, because Gasly has not been a rear gunner at all to Max Verstappen this season, bar Silverstone, where Gasly was on the pace for some reason. I don't know what happened that weekend, but yeah, I can see it being sensible. It just seems, I don't know, there's something in my head that just Bottas to Red Bull seems a little bit far-fetched. But, I mean, Ricciardo went to Renault, so anything's possible.
Nick in chat just said Hulkenberg and Bottas for Haas. That wouldn't be a bad lineup at all, would it, for Haas? No offence to Magnussen and Grosjean, but a bit of an upgrade in the sense that I can't see Bottas and Hulkenberg running into each other too often. That wouldn't be a bad shout, would it, at all? But do you think Bottas to Haas, or do you think it is more likely somebody like a Kvyat or a Wehrlein rather than taking on experience as Bottas? And I suppose the other thing as well, actually, I'll throw at you as well, Dan, and we'll wrap up on Bottas, but some talk of him possibly going back to Williams as well. Do you think he'd go back to Williams, from Mercedes to Williams? Can you see that? I can't. Why would he? He might as well go to Formula E and race Mercedes over there. At least he'd be competing somewhere in the field.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it many times. A Formula One drive is exactly what you want. And I think if you have the choice between Williams and Formula E, I still think people would try or take the Williams seat. Do Williams have enough money to pay Bottas? I question a little bit. But I think Bottas to Haas, I mean, yeah, that's a huge downgrade from Mercedes. But I think for Haas, that's a perfect move. That's the exact kind of driver they're looking for. As I mentioned earlier, consistency. And I'm going to keep banging on about consistency because that's exactly what they need. I think Williams is too far-fetched. Haas, for me, is the only real sensible one. Maybe Renault if Hulkenberg moves on, but I don't know why. I just find Bottas moving out of Mercedes a real difficult one because he's not got age on his side. He's not a superstar driver. And I look at Haas and I think, okay, let's say they get rid of Grosjean. Do they go with Bottas, who they know can drive, or do they go with a Wehrlein, who potentially has that little bit of fire, a little bit of more spirit that Bottas potentially lacks a little bit? So I think if I was going to put money on it today, I'd say he's going to go to Haas. But I'm so stuck. It's all such a mess, the silly season. But I think Haas for me is the one.
Tough for him, isn't it? Because anywhere he goes is a step down.
Yeah, and a massive step down as well. I
Because
mean,
it's not going to be Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, only if Vettel retires, and I don't really see that happening. Although, if he did, I think he'd be a perfect fit for Ferrari as well, being a number two to Leclerc. But yeah, sorry, I mean, even bigger rabbit hole now. But
he'll be picked up, surely. He's got to be. Somebody's got to look at Bottas and go, he's just what we need.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to say, but couldn't get my words out. He's too good of a driver to not be on the grid. But there's so little spaces in Formula One this year. It's exactly what we saw last year with the likes of Van Dorn dropping off the grid and Alonso struggling to find a way back into Formula One. That's a complete different topic for another day. So I just hope he can, just a team takes a chance on him.
I don't want to talk about stuff.
Sorry, mate.
Still hurts. It's still so painful. But avenues closing off all the time. Racing Point. Otmar Safnauer's come out and he was asked basically, I did it in the Garage Gossip video on Friday, are you expecting a change to your lineup? He said basically no, so it looks like Sergio Perez and, I know, earth-shattering news, Lance Stroll looks set to stay at the team that his dad owns, so that's highly likely. We already know that Vettel and Leclerc are under contract. Matteo Binotto has pretty much said they're staying. Nothing... It's one of those things that's not officially been said, but we all know that it's going to come out. And we also know that McLaren are tied up for next year as well with Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris. So the avenues are closing off for Valtteri Bottas. It is leaving the likes of Renault. You'd assume they'll stick with Ricciardo. Haas is, as you've said, Dan, you think that's the most likely option. We don't know what's going on at Red Bull. It all depends on how Albon does in these next 9 races. I'm just trying to think. Alpha, I think they'll stick with Gio. And although I think he's come out recently and said that his contract isn't worth the paper it's written on, but Kimi likes to say stuff like that. He'll still be there next season, you would expect. I think Gio will get another year. Toro Rosso, Bottas isn't going to go to Toro Rosso, so they're closing off quickly. So I hope somebody picks him up, because it's like you have said, Dan, he's too good a driver not to have in a team and not to be on the grid, but it's all going to come down to contracts for other drivers, but also, as is often the case in Formula One, money. So if he can get himself some nice big sponsors behind him, he can probably get that second seat at Racing Point if he wants. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess for poor old Valtteri. I hope he finds himself a seat. I really do. He's like you say, Dan, way too good not to be on the grid, and he has had a good season. I think better than last year. I know you were one arguing for him to stay, but would you say he's had a better season this year than last year?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, this is the first time in Hamilton's career where he's had someone, I don't want to say matching him, but pretty close to him in qualifying. I think they both have 4 pole positions each this season. So he's definitely upped his game this year as Bottas. So it almost seems criminal that of all seasons to get rid of him, it'd be this one. So yeah, he's definitely stepped up.
Right, I'm going to take some questions from Twitter, and also then we'll do some from the F1, the YouTube community tab here on the F1 Word, and then I'll come to you guys in chat, and we'll speculate a little bit together for a while. But Lewis, who does the design for the channel, actually, good afternoon, mate, says, would you rather drive for an underdog team that is never quite good enough to win, but be loved by everybody, or drive for a dominant team that wins on a regular basis, but be hated by everyone? I wonder who he's talking about there. It's got to be the latter, hasn't it, Dan? If you're a racing driver, you want to win. You don't care if you're liked or not, surely. Oh, see, Dan cares. Dan likes to be loved.
I know. That's why I used to love Lotus. That's why I love Grosjean. I mean, everyone loves Grosjean, right? I mean, come on. Yeah, I think you've got to go for the victories. That sounds dreadful. That's so against my character. but yeah, victories are everything to a Formula One driver, aren't they? So, and, you know, at the end of the day, 20 years down the line, what do the history books remember? The nice guys or the winners? So, yeah.
Ruben, at Ruben Hovers over on Twitter says, if Nick de Vries wins the F2 Championship, do you think he will be in a good position for an F1 reserve driver or full-time seat? Do you know what? Controversial opinion, maybe. I don't get the hype. He's a nice guy. He's a good driver, but I don't get why everyone's suddenly going on about Nick de Vries. He's doing a good job in F2, but that field is seriously weak compared to how it was, let's say, last season, for example. It's not the weakest F2 field we've ever had, but it's certainly not the strongest, and he's winning championship. How many years has he been in F2? He's had to wait for everyone else to disappear to have a crack at the title. So, a nice guy, good driver, but I just don't think... I just don't see him in F1. Be nice to. I like it when F2 drivers get promoted, but I'm just not sure.
I actually agree with you. I think you're spot on there. I know. Remember this moment, everyone. No, I agree with you. I mean, Latifi and De Vries and Giotto, the main three at the front of the championship this year, all three of them have been in Formula 2 since Charles Leclerc won his championship, if not earlier, I believe. So it's not as if these guys are in their first year pushing for the championship and then maybe getting into Formula 1. These guys have had their chance now, and I think in the question there, reserve driver role, yeah, I can see that happening. But to be honest with you, the only driver I really see maybe move into F1 from F2 is Latifi, and that's only to Williams if he can bring the money. That's the only one I can realistically see. And as you say, De Vries seems like a really nice guy, but I don't think he's Formula One standards. I mean, look at him last season against Albon. I'm trying to Norris. I couldn't think of Norris then. Albon, Norris, and Russell, and look at him against Leclerc. He wasn't on their level, and so should a team take a chance? I think it's too risky, and so I see him more so head into a Formula E or something like that. To be honest,
I'm going to call it the Markelov effect. Everybody, if you've been following this channel for a long time, you know how much we like Artem Markelov, if nothing else, just for his amazing overtaking, especially on Monaco. How he does that, just brilliant. But it says a lot about a driver if they've been in F2 for that long and a team haven't picked them up. Is kind of how I see it. And again, he's a good driver. You can never say, the thing is, you can never say never. You touched on there with Latifi, Dan. If they got money behind him, they can have their pick of a number of seats on the grid. So if he can get some good sponsorship, he can turn around to a Racing Point, as an example, or a Haas or a Williams and say, hey, here's X million dollars a year, I want your second seat, and they're not going to turn it down, are they? Because if he wins the championship this year in F2, he's an F2 champion and he brings money, and they can use that F2 championship as a bit of a PR spin to make out that it was nothing to do with the money. That's just an added bonus.
I mean, look at Sorokin. I didn't ever see Sorokin go into Formula One, and there he was last year.
And earned his seat for this year and didn't get it. Don't get me started on that one again. Oh, Sergey, could he make a return next year, do you think? Or has he had his shot now?
I think he's had his shot, to be honest with you. Again, there's just so little spaces on the grid. I think you've really got to bring a lot of money or really be a standout driver. And as we just said, Bottas might not get on the grid. So I think if you're any team, you would rather have a Valtteri Bottas than a Sergei Sorokin.
James Jeffrey on Twitter, obviously, because that's where I'm reading from, says, do you think there will be any more changes from any other teams during the break? The latest I've had, Haas are sticking to the end of the season as far as I know, and I don't think there's anybody else under immediate threat on the grid. Kubica, a few people do talk about, but I think Williams have already said he's seen a season out, so I don't expect it. But equally, maybe not in a summer break, but if we get to Spa and Monza and K-Mag and Grosjean run into each other again, I suppose the point I'm making, Dan, is the only team I see kind of on the fence and teetering or toying with the idea of a driver change is Haas, and I'm not convinced that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And I think even if Haas did make a switch, it wouldn't be with another current driver. I think that's far too radical of a switch. I think they would just promote Fittipaldi. I don't know if Fittipaldi's got enough super license points, to be honest, but I think they'd find someone. No, but I think they'd find someone externally. I don't think there'd be a huge driver switch midway through the second part of the season. I don't see that happening, but I would tend to agree. I don't see them dropping Kubica as much as I think they probably should, and he's not been good enough. I think he's pretty safe. So yeah, sadly, I think it'll be one of the Haas boys, if anyone. But again, it seems unlikely.
Yeah. 2,400 of you watching on a Monday night. Oh, so nice. Cheer everybody up after a horrible Monday, I'd imagine. A few Red Bull fans, Gasly fans a little bit down tonight. But if you are new, don't forget to subscribe and to smash that like button as well. Really helps out the channel. It'd be great to have you on board. Went through 75,000 subscribers today as well. So that's just flipping insane. Thank you so much, everyone, for your subs. So please do sub if you're new. And also smash a like as well as, I guess, maybe start the road to 100k soon. Jesus
Ooh.
Christ. Not bad for a channel that I didn't think would get more than 100 people watching it. Don't forget to subscribe and to smash that like button. Just saying that as I load up YouTube. A few people put some questions in the other day. I'll do a few of these and then I'll come to you guys in chat. A number of people, including the Keeper of Chaos, asking about my grades of drivers A to F or rating them out of 10. My half-term report series, because I can't think of anything better than that as a title, that starts probably Wednesday now. It'll be tomorrow Wednesday, but no later than Wednesday. And there'll be 3 parts, starting with the bottom 4 teams and their drivers all the way up to the final video, which will be Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull, and I'll grade them all there and give them a rating out of 10. So, yeah, that'll get done. It's going to be interesting. There's a few drivers, Dan. I've been making some notes over the last couple of days. A few drivers that are really quite tough to rate. One in particular, Kubica, you were talking about there. It's really difficult to really gauge him. Your only measure is George Russell because that car's so terrible, but he's been away for so long. He's fighting a car that's absolutely diabolical, and we don't know really how he's getting on with the physical races. So he's quite. I've just found him really tough to rate Robert Kubica.
Yeah, I know what you mean. He's just such an unknown quantity. And I don't know about you, but also I found Sergio Perez really hard to decide because that Racing Point car was there at the beginning of the year, but it was practically last year's car. And he's got points, but is the car good enough for points? His teammate Stroll, is Stroll doing a brilliant job? So yeah, you're right. There's a few drivers in that midfield that are just, I don't want to say impossible, but really hard to pinpoint a number or a grade on.
I mean, Stroll's a 10, obviously, out of 10.
Yeah, of course.
We know that. Just like to thank Lawrence for the check this morning. Massively appreciated. Dylan Bolton says, who do you think will win more World Drivers' Championships, Russell, Norris or Albon? Why did I ask that? I always do that. Right now, if he nails... Oh, this is tough. Why did I ask this question, Dan? It depends. If Russell gets in that Mercedes quickly enough and that Mercedes stays dominant, you'd have to say Russell. But Albon is, if he can nail it, is going to be in, at worst, the 3rd best car on the grid as of Belgium. Possibly the 2nd best car on the grid from Belgium onwards. So if you talk about a driver to get there first, you'd probably say at the moment Albon is better placed out of those. But it's all down to what Mercedes do with Russell and how dominant they stay. But I've got to pick one. I don't know, Dan.
I'm not helping you.
I know you bloody not. You'll pick a different one as well. I'll go Norris then. I'll put in an argument for Albon. I'll put in an argument for Russell. Then I'll just say Norris because generally when I put up a decent argument, it goes the other way. So Norris. Dan.
Well, I don't think Norris, funnily enough.
Oh, really?
I don't think McLaren are going to be anywhere near a title fight for the next few years. And as we mentioned earlier, Renault. Well, that is very true. That is very true. But I think he will stay at McLaren for at least the next 3 or 4 years. So I like your argument for Albon, but I still think Max is going to be with that team for quite some time. And I think Max will be the number one. As much as people love to say sometimes teams don't need a number one and number two, Max will be the number one. So I'm going to go with Georgie Russell. I think if Hamilton leaves, if Ocon and Russell are in the same team, of what I've seen of them, I think Russell potentially could have the edge. So I'm going to go George Russell.
Interesting.
Boring answer.
I didn't like to say. So 2 more from the community tab. Avram Van A says, who do you think will be Lewis's title contender, Valtteri or Max? I think we're all pretty much in agreement from what I see in comments, and I think we've had this conversation before, Dan, that Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes will have to implode for anybody to take that title away from him. What's it saying there? 62 points clear of his teammate, 69 clear of Verstappen, 94 up the road from Vettel, so he's pretty much got that in the bag. They've got the constructors. But if I was picking... the closest challenger to him, obviously mathematically, is Bottas, but I can't look past Verstappen. I think he is, as I'm going to discuss in a video over this summer break, I think he is a title outsider. It's going to take a lot, but there's no reason to say he can't. He's the most likely out of everybody else, in my view.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think in my head the tracks coming up, because Spa and Monza, I expect Red Bull to potentially struggle, but races a little bit further down, Singapore, Japan, Mexico, Red Bull always go well at. So I think,
You say that, but weren't we all expecting him to struggle at Silverstone?
Yeah, very true. I mean, even last season in Brazil, everyone expected Red Bull to not be there, and Max almost won the thing by a country mile. But then the incident happened, so we won't talk about that.
No.
But yeah, I think Max has been the driver of the season so far. I really do. And as you just mentioned, there's been circuits this season which Red Bull have had no right to be anywhere near the front. And yet Verstappen's been in the top 5 every single race. He's been on the podium more often than not. I find it very hard to look past Verstappen, to be honest. As much as Mercedes are smashing it in terms of development and that car this year, Max Verstappen in that Red Bull, they just seem to be one together now. So, and with the pressure on Bottas in the second half of the season, I think that'll be a factor. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Max as well.
Yeah, I mean, races coming up. We've got Singapore, so they should be, on paper, again, should be strong there. You'd expect them to be strong in Mexico. You'd hope they'd be strong in Japan as well for Honda. Max Verstappen's comeback drives in Austin these last few years, so obviously they've got some pace there. Again, Brazil last year, high altitude, could suit them quite nicely. So there's some races where they could do very well coming up, but I think Spa and Monza is going to be Mercedes versus Ferrari because they are power all the way. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Ferrari win at Monza with that super long, with the long straights and whatnot. So it's a tough. Again, we know it's going to take a hell of an effort for anybody to get anywhere near Hamilton this season, but I think he is an outsider Verstappen for that one. Last one from the YouTube side of things, from Martin Van Can. It says, how much is Danny Ricciardo regretting his move to Renault, and what do you guys think are his options if he so chooses? I think regret. it's probably one of his overriding emotions at the moment. I think Red Bull also regretting the fact he left, because they could have done with him certainly this season, given how things have gone with Gasly. In terms of his, I mean, I say regret, it depends, doesn't it? He knows the long-term plan of Renault. So he knows he might be more confident for next season. He might be more confident. It might be all about 2021 for him and Renault. He might just be there to get settled in. So he might be quite happy, but he doesn't seem overly thrilled with the way things are going. They are struggling. But in terms of his options, if he chooses to lose or chooses to leave, Ferrari, if Vettel were to retire at the end of next year or leave the team, he's out of contract, could be a possibility. Again, if he finds some form, possibly Mercedes if they decide not to go with Russell just quite so soon. Maybe he could go there, but other than that, I don't see where he goes. If he wants to compete for winning races and championships. I think, if I'm being honest, I know it's 39 points on the board, 399 off Mercedes. It sounds a long way off, but I think his best shot of winning or challenging for podiums and race wins is to stay at Renault and see what happens in 2021.
Yeah, I think answering the question from my side of things, I still think he made the right choice. I think it was the right time to leave Red Bull. Verstappen at the end of last season was comfortably beating Ricciardo, and I would have hated to see Verstappen, I don't want to say destroy, I think that's a bit extreme, but Verstappen beating Ricciardo every single weekend, blame being pushed to Ricciardo. I would have hated to see that. So I think he made the right decision. And I think long term, moving to Renault, as you sort of just alluded to then, what that allows is if the car is running well, then he's a team leader and he's going to be fighting for a championship. If it's not going well, there is now I don't want to say an easy get out of jail card, but an easier pathway to a Mercedes if Hamilton retires, to a Ferrari if Vettel retires. And I think that was, in my thinking anyway, I think that's definitely one of the bigger factors Ricciardo probably thought about at the time, because I doubt very highly, although it happened with Vettel, I doubt Red Bull would want to see one of their star drivers move to a direct competitor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think Ricciardo, he'll be disappointed with this season, because I think a lot of us expected Renault to be close to the podium, which they're definitely not. But I think he still made the right decision, which I know at the moment seems a little bit silly to say.
I think again for him, right decision. But if on paper, when you look at the results, it's not, is it? But I know what you're saying. For him, it made complete sense. Do you feel from a bit?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I do. I want to see him at the front. I mean, his performance in Hungary, that dirty dive bomb he did on Giovinazzi. That was real memes right there, real memories of seasons past. I mean, I want to see him back at the front. But there's brilliant drivers up and down the grid. And yeah, it's a shame because we all thought Renault were going to be there, and it's just not worked out.
No. Come on then, chat. I'm coming to you guys now. If you just pop your questions in, I'll answer as many as we can over the next 10 or 15 minutes. And don't forget as well, if you are watching, to smash a like on the thingy. Smash the like button. I've just said it as somebody's laughing at me now. Yeah, smash the like on the video, and also don't forget to subscribe as well. So let's see what we've got coming in. So, see, I like your channel, but saying smash the like button when you are 30 plus is, yeah, look, I'm physically in my 40s, but mentally I'm about 15, so, you know. Yeah. Hamilton versus Verstappen, which one, says Alexander Roberts. I'm not going to try and pronounce your surname, so apologies there. But Hamilton versus Verstappen, which one? In terms of picking a driver lineup, if I'm going long-term Verstappen, if I'm going to here and now, Hamilton. And that's me hopping on the fence. Your turn, Dan.
Yeah, that was really well played. I don't know if I can match that. I'm upsetting one set of fans, and I don't know if I can do that. Right now, I would go Hamilton, is all I'm going to say.
There you go. Flying Tiger says, here's a question. Why am I up at 4 a.m? Because the F1 word is live. That's why, mate. Mick Schumacher for 2021 says Byron Thompson, and Luke Ryan on that point says, could Mick Schumacher go on a run of victories to win the GP2, F2 title, and then debut in the Haas or Alpha? Next season for me is too early for Mick Schumacher. Even on a run of victories this year, he needs another season. He's not been consistent enough. Fantastic win in Hungary. Emotional is the word. As a Michael Schumacher fanboy, that was a big moment. So yeah, I'd like to see him in F1 because it would be probably again more from the emotional side of things rather than on nostalgic side of things. But I think 2020 is definitely too early. 2021 though, as Byron Thompson has gone with, a possibility. Alpha stick with Gio for another year, Dan, see how he gets on if he's not cutting it, or if he is cutting it and Kimi decides he's off. Alpha, you know, that second seat there could go to another Ferrari driver, especially if Gio goes. That's Ferrari's seat, I think, at Alpha, so he could end up in there. I'm not sure about Haas, but possibly Alpha.
I can see that happening. Raikkonen's only got a 2-year deal as well, hasn't he? So I think 2021 makes sense. That there's, like you, he's not been consistent enough in Formula 2 this season. And before this previous weekend in Hungary, he wasn't even the lead Ferrari young driver in the championship. It was Callum Ilott. So I think it's too soon. But we have seen from Schumacher, I've got to hold my hands up and say, he's always done better in his second season in any championship he's been in. So part of me still holding out and thinking it's brilliant he's got a win already this early on in his Formula 2 career. I just hope he does what he's done all throughout his career and what Alex Albon did, and in that second season make a real push for the title. And then, you know what? Even with that surname, he should deserve a chance if he's at least fighting and close to the championship.
Even with that surname, that'll go down well in the comments. Shouldn't be in with his surname. Gildo De Silva says Williams to be a midfield team by the end of the year? ? Big step. I mean, the point in Germany was, I don't know if they looked into it. They looked into it, but they finished every race this season with both cars, and they were there to pick up the piece when it all went wrong. So yeah, it was lucky, but they were there to pick up on that. But Hungary, George Russell so close to Q2, that car looks to be quicker. Certainly around that circuit, how it'll get on as the season progresses, I don't know. I think being in the midfield is a big ask for the rest of this season, but there's no reason why they can't be right on the back of whoever is ninth place come the end of the season. I don't expect to pick up many more points, but I think that they're definitely closing the gap. So I think catch the midfield, yes, but to be in it, if that makes sense, I'm not expecting that. But what do you reckon, Dan? Are you impressed with Williams' progress over the last few races?
Yeah, I am. I mean, Hungary, like you just said, I mean, Russell, even though he didn't get into Q2, that was an awesome job. That was such a surprise to see. Whether that's going to be consistently close to Q2, I think is very unlikely. And to be fair, Ricciardo and Perez both screwed each other's laps over. So that made it a little bit nicer in Williams' favour as well. But I mean, looking forward to tracks like Japan, Singapore, where overtaking could be difficult. Maybe if Williams are potentially close to Q2, a few grid penalties here and there and a cheeky little strategy that no one else has gone for, maybe another point potentially on a really narrow circuit. But I think, yeah, midfield, I think is a bit too much of a stretch for this year, but progress has definitely been made. And I feel a little bit more confident for next year for them.
MG in chat says best driver in the F2 season so far, question mark. Why even ask? We all know it is Mahavir Raghunathan, don't we? We all know that. So why even ask the question?
Yeah.
Close second, Sean Galale. I mean, why even... best driver in the F2 grid this season. I mean, if you look at the championship, it's De Vries or Latifi, isn't it? Really, but I've not been blown away by either of them, to be honest. Oh, I'm going to get so much hate for that now. But yeah, I'd probably go De Vries, despite everything I said earlier. I think out of everyone on the grid, he has impressed, but I'm just trying to think if there's anybody that's come in this season. Calderon hasn't really delivered. Raghunathan, aside from getting penalties every other day, multiple in races, he's not really done much. Aitken picking up some surprise podiums is a shout.
Aitken's not bad. But I mean, for me, Guanyan Zhou, his previous previous championships he's been in, he's never really excelled. But some of the performances he has done this season, I did not expect whatsoever. And I think he still leads all of the rookies in the field. And there's not some bad rookies in there at all. I mean, I expected Hubert to do really good. I expect Schumacher to do a pretty decent job, but I didn't expect Zhou to do a better job. And I know this is Formula One here, but he's been pretty heavily linked to the cheetah seat. That's a mouthful in Formula E. So I think that's a really strong job for a guy that came into the championship and people didn't expect a fat lot. But that also says a lot about the championship this year. If I think one of the best drivers is down in 5th or 6th place, because like we said a few times, I don't think it's been the highest standard of F2 this season.
Yeah, a couple of people in chat asking if there's any updates on Rich Energy and Haas. I think the last there was from Gunther Steiner was they'll find out over the summer break, and if they turn up with a different name or whatever in Spa, then that's what it is. But I don't think there's much. They seem to be doing a lot more retweeting of Haas, so I think they've finally got hold of their Twitter account again after seizing it from the rogue individual, Mr. Story, as he's preferred to be known. But yes, anyway, I've not heard anything on Richard. I don't know if you have at all, Dan?
No, nothing. Not even the new logo. I mean,
No.
I've just seen endless designs from different people and fake accounts, but no, nothing really, to be honest. So quite surprising.
Can't Mercedes buy Verstappen from Red Bull if they are really looking to the future, says Franz. I mean, they can. The money's there if they want to, but I think Verstappen is the one that they will go all out for when Hamilton decides he's off, whether that's retirement or decides to leave. That's when they'll move for Verstappen. So expect the rumours next year will start pretty quickly, as they did last year on Lewis Hamilton's contract. He's out of contract. I think Verstappen is out of contract. Vettel is out of contract. A lot of drivers are, because we're coming to that crossover point, aren't we, with the new regulations? So a lot of drivers teed themselves up for that to keep their options open. So there's going to be a lot of change and a lot of speculation next year. Silly season will kick off pretty much as soon as the season starts. Don't be surprised to see Verstappen in a Mercedes for 2021 is the point I'm making. And also, I don't see why Hamilton would leave. I think the only way Hamilton leaves Mercedes is if he retires, Dan. Because at the moment, why would he? Why would you leave Mercedes?
Yeah, I mean, the only way I see him leaving is if he doesn't win the championship this year and the 7 world titles looks out of reach. And I think, as we've said a few times, something major has to go wrong for him to not win this season. So I agree with you. Verstappen is going to be number 1 on most teams' lists if they can get him. Mercedes would love to have him, but I don't see Hamilton leaving for a few seasons.
Wilbur Fernandez says Hamilton to move to Formula E with Mercedes. You heard it here first, folks. That would be a shock and a half, wouldn't it? That really, really would. Byron Thompson, will McLaren be split between IndyCar and F1? Interesting question. Of course, they're going full-time IndyCar next year, aren't they? Do you think Nando is going to take a seat there next year, or do you think that's something we'll hear once the F1 silly season's all done and the contracts are all tied down? Do you think there's a little bit of Fernando that's just sat there going, I might get a chance?
I mean, maybe, but I don't know how you felt when they announced this, but I thought it was very bizarre that they let Stoffel go. Sorry, don't want to mention Stoffel again. But they also let Fernando go, didn't they, earlier on in the year? And now they announce it. So now almost, I mean, yes, I think you're right. I think Alonso may very well go back because he's got nothing lined up for next year. But it just seems a little bit strange that they've let all these drivers go and now they're making the move. But yeah, I think Fernando will most likely head back.
I mean, you'd expect McLaren's priority will still be F1, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely.
Their DNA. We'll take a couple more questions then. See how we get on. A few of you asking. I will do some super chats as well. So I'm going to do these questions and I'll do some super chats super quickly as well. Hey, lots of supers in there. Wolf to become CEO of F1, says Alexander. That's a question. That's something he's been linked to quite a lot, actually, isn't it? So I think he'd be a good one. Him or Christian Horner, I think, would put some boots up some backside, so that wouldn't be too bad. Zach Mullen, does any driver have a contract for 2021? That's a very good question. I honestly don't know. I seem to recall either one of the McLaren boys having a long-term deal, which was till 2022. I think be wrong.
Russell's was a 3-year deal.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how long Leclerc's deal was, but I would imagine they've got him pretty nailed down.
Yeah. So the answer to that is we're not sure, but there are some definitely. Raceman TV, Hamilton can get 8 titles. I think he's got number 6 pretty much done and dusted. I'll knock on wood for Hamilton fans. They'll be mad if he loses the championship. It'll be my fault. Those that follow the channel. 7, he's going to have a shot at it next year. I can't see Mercedes falling away that much, so sticks around. 8 is definitely a possibility. It's all on these 2021 regs, but I'm not expecting too much of a change for 2021, unfortunately. Will Albon get a win before Charles Leclerc, says Ben Perry? I'll let you have that one, Dan, while I have a drink.
I don't think so. I know it sounds silly this year, but I think Ferrari will win a race. I know that's quite scary to think about, but looking at Spa, looking at Monza, I think they're pretty close to getting a victory there. So whether it's Leclerc or Vettel, we don't know. And I think Albon, that's a little bit too much to ask in his rookie year, to be honest with you. But Red Bull, we mentioned earlier on, could be quick in Japan, Singapore, Mexico, Brazil. But I still think for me, Leclerc seems the more likely just because of how the calendar's laid out.
Well, I mean, Mexico, you'd expect Red Bull to be fighting for pole. Yeah. Let's say Max gets it. Maybe, again, sorry Verstappen fans, I'll knock on wood. Perhaps he gets a mechanical failure. Albon second snatches a win. It's going to need something like that because I think he would probably have to, with Verstappen technically, mathematically being in the title fight, if he is still at Mexico, which would be a big ask, but if he is, I can see them keeping Albon behind him. I don't think they'll be allowed to fight. But yeah, I think Albon's going to do all right. It's a big pressure on him, but winning a race, I don't know, yeah. It's just dawned on me as well. Something's just dawned on me. Doing a bingo update with Stuart on Wednesday, and I think I've lost one of my squares because I think what my thing was Gasly will get at least one win. That went well. But yeah, damn, crap. That's so annoying. It's battling Hazel for that one. 2 more before we end the stream then. Oh, actually, what I will say about Monza, actually, on the Leclerc thing, how amazing would it be for him to get his first Ferrari win at Monza? And how amazing would it be for Vettel to get his first win in over a year and give him a confidence boost at Monza? That's a weekend that could be massive for Ferrari going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, isn't that still crazy that Vettel hasn't won since Spa?
Yeah.
Last year. I still can't get over that statistic. So he's got to hope he wins in Belgium. He really does. But you're right. That's an absolute massive fairy tale for Leclerc if he can do that. And I don't know, Ferrari fans, I don't know whether you would take one win at Monza or a decent car over the full season. I'm guessing full season, but I'm sure you'll take Monza as well.
Sneffery F1 says, sights to Mercedes, question mark. it. Look, no, but
Nah.
he's a driver. I think Sainz. He's in a good team. I think he's in a good place now, and he's happy at McLaren. They're happy with him, but he is a driver that I think can count himself very unlucky not to be in one of those Red Bulls. Look at what he's doing this season, just showing the talent we all sort of, I've never been glowing in my assessment of Carlos Sainz, but he's showing this year he's got it, that's for sure. Maybe Ferrari, if Vettel goes.
Ooh.
And they haven't got a driver they want to put alongside Leclerc, and Hamilton's retired and Verstappen's gone to Mercedes. If Sainz is best of the rest for the next couple of years, comfortably as he is at the moment, why not? Stranger things have happened, Dan.
Very true. I like the sound of that. I'm trying to picture it in my head, and I can see Sainz in red. That makes sense. And I'm guessing a couple of years down the line, if that were to happen, Norris could be team leader for McLaren, so they'd probably be happy to let Sainz go. Yeah, I think Ferrari's more likely than Mercedes, but Sainz, mega year so far this season and deserves a top move.
I agree with that. He's been so good this year. I mean, McLaren in general have been one of the surprises of this season. Do you think it's just coincidence that Fernando's left and the team has improved, or are you like me and you partly because you love the drama? But tinfoil hats on, I do look at that and go, for that to happen again at another team, that's quite a big coincidence.
I agree with you there. Despite the team coming out and saying thank you to Stoffel and Fernando for the work they did last year, I still think it has been a major pressure off the team with Fernando leaving. So, yeah, I'm going to agree with what you just said there.
I agree. We're going to answer one more from Elite Danger. It says, will Vettel retire from the lost love of F1 or be dropped for lack of performance and nowhere to go in the coming years? I think that's the biggest problem for Vettel, isn't it? If he decides he's had enough at Ferrari and goes, where does he go? Are Mercedes going to pick him up? I can't see it because they've got Ocon, they've got Russell, and they'll go for Verstappen. I don't see a return to Red Bull, although he did exhale near Helmut Marko the other week, I've heard, so perhaps there's something on there. That's all you need to do these days is exhale near Helmut Marko, and you've probably got yourself a seat. I don't see him going back down the grid, so I don't see, no disrespect to those teams, but I can't see him at a McLaren. I can't see him dropping into a Racing Point or a Renault unless they've made strides forward. So I think for Vettel, if he leaves Ferrari, it will be for retirement. But I don't see him leaving before the end of 2020. I think he'll do next season. But I'm just trying to think, will he go before he's dropped? Or could we end up with a Schumacher situation? I know comparing Vettel and Schumacher is a little bit ridiculous, given I know they're both German and both multiple world titles, but Schumacher far better. But I'm going to say that, aren't I? I'm biased in that respect. But could we see another Schumacher situation where there's a bit of a jump before you're pushed with him? Sort of like, announce your retirement, we'd like to bring somebody else in, but we don't want to do you the disservice of dropping you.
Yeah, I think that could happen. And the difficulty with me with Seb is when he got that move to Ferrari, I thought at the time, especially 2015, he had a really strong season. And I thought, actually, I had my doubts over Sebastian Vettel, to be honest, when he was at Red Bull. I was a bit younger than mine, so wasn't quite mature in my Formula One opinions back then. But the last couple of seasons, his wheel-to-wheel racing hasn't been as good as other drivers around him. I think that's damaged his reputation. And so I think other teams lower down the grid, would he want to go to them? Probably not. But would other teams potentially want to take a risk on a guy who's later on in his career, who doesn't really want to be a backmarker team? So I'm with you. I think if he's going to leave Formula One, it will be with Ferrari. I don't see him going elsewhere unless a new team comes in. And I could potentially see him taking a chance with a team. Let's just say, for argument's sake, a Porsche. If Porsche came in, I could see him go, you know what, I'll help them develop for a season. I could see that. But no, I don't see him going back to Red Bull, and I doubt Mercedes would give him the chance.
Yeah, I agree with that. Somebody in chat says, go easy on Seb. I like Seb. I do. He's not where he was, but confidence has taken a hit over the last couple of years, hasn't it? There's no doubt about that, partly for his own doing with his mistakes, but I think also it's just not worked out from Ferrari at the moment. But he has won races, and you never know. Just one win. I think Martin Brundle says this quite often on Sky. One win, and he expects his head to be up again, and he'll get that confidence back, and maybe it'll be the turning point for him. But that's got to come soon. I'm like we said earlier, Dan, I can't believe it's been nearly a year. In fact, it's almost a year exactly since his last win, Belgium last year. I mean, it's insane for a driver that at the start of last season was fighting for the title. You know, I'm not going to get back into this. Canada was sort of his. You look at Bahrain, that could have been his if he'd not had that spin and Leclerc had still had his failure. So the possibilities were there for wins, but it's just not worked out for him. But I do like Seb, and I'm not giving him too much of a hard time. Poor guy. But we will leave it there, Dan. Thank you very much for coming along, mate. It's been a pleasure, as always, to sit and talk nonsense about Formula 1 for an hour and 15 minutes. And I think we only mentioned Grosjean and Stoffel a couple of times, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it could be a record. But no, thanks for having me, man. It's been good fun, and I think we've answered some pretty interesting questions. But I think we've got some fun answers out as well.
I might pick them out next time, pre-stream, so they don't put us on the spot like that with some of them, or at least read them before I read them out. But yes, mate, thank you very much, and don't forget. There is a link to Dan's channel in the description down below. Do go and subscribe to that. But I will inevitably talk to you soon, mate. Thank you very much again.
Thanks, man. See you later. See you later, chat.
Awesome stuff. Thank you to Dan. And of course, thank you to you guys for coming along as well. Now, as I say, channel has just gone through 75,000 subscribers, so don't forget to hit that sub button as we head on towards the big 100k. Terrifying thought, but yes, thank you very much to everyone that subscribed over the 2 years the channel's been going. It's a massive pleasure, and it's quite humbling to be in this position, so thank you very much. To all of you, don't forget to, what can I say to an age-appropriate comment. Don't forget to press that thumbs up button and give the stream a like before you disappear. That'd be massively appreciated. I will be back probably Wednesday, I would say, with the first of 3 half-term reports, starting with Williams, Haas, Racing Point and Alpha, I think it will be, and then the other 2 will go up later in the week as well. We'll be live again probably at some point next week as well, answering a few more of your questions and talking a bit more silly season. If you didn't catch the news this morning, you want the full statement from Red Bull, you can check it out on their website, of course, or you can head on over to the video that went up earlier today. Thank you for your support on that one, massively appreciated. In the meantime, though, don't forget that you can follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.